So, you're probably looking at this like, what in the world? Well, this video is a bit different from my normal content. Actually, this video was the direct result of a posted in the community section about, asking me anything. Well, the person asked, I only got one question asked on it. So, rather than just doing a, generic go from question to the other question to the other question to the other question, I figured we'll do something a little bit different, okay? I'm going to talk a bit about my history with gaming and how the internet changed my perspective of some of these games while playing boxing from the Atari 2600. I might end up probably swapping this one because it's pretty straightforward, okay? So, yeah, a little bit. Let's see if I can. I can't. Yeah, there we go. So, about. It's been years since I played boxing, and what's weird is that back. Because I remember from the Atari 2600 how you put the cartridge in and then you use the console switches to change the settings on it. And then after you get your settings set up and your controls all set up, and then you could just simply take and flip the system on. And so how did the internet change, how I feel about the 20th century? Well, after I got the internet, I learned that the system was actually at the very root designed as a Pong machine, not to play games like Defender and Pac-Man or boxing. Basically, the trick they would use one paddle for one sprite, and then the other paddle for the other sprite, and then they would use the playfield background to basically make the background of the games. And then after Atari 2600, they also released the 5200 and 7800, and then, well, what was weird was that it wasn't until the NES came out that they did that. I win. And then the thing about those was, when I finally got the internet, I then learned that for King's analog stick, was that what happened was that when Atari basically sold out to their company, I found out that they basically opted not to release the 5200, 7800 because they figured, well, the 2600 was popular enough, and that's why they were so underpowered when compared to the NES and the Genesis and all that, which I'll be getting to them in a second. And then I remember finally getting the NES and experiences of Super Mario Brothers and all that, and Rob the Robot, which about Rob the Robot was. When I tried it, I was like, okay, then this is actually a legit gaming system. Real graphics, real sprites and all that. And then when I had used Rob for the first time, I was like, okay, Rob's kind of neat. I like the robot. I like robots. Robots are kind of neat. And I quickly figured out, why don't you just take the robot out of the equation and just simply use the other controller and do the inputs. I mean, he's just rooting to the boxing gameplay right now. And then I actually take the controller instead of having Rob work it and change the screen. I could just use the controller, just flip the puzzles. got KO'd. And then let's talk a bit about Genesis. Well, with the Genesis, then of course you had that little 32X, the Sega CD thing, and I didn't really understand what the heck. What happened there was that basically the Sega of America, the Sega of Japan basically were infighting, and accidentally, because Sega of America, Sega of Japan, and were having the whole infighting thing, what happened with that was that, well, instead of basically them working together, they was trying to make a better company. They instead would say America was developing their system, and Sega of Japan was working on developing their system. Of course, what's popular in Japan ain't always necessarily popular in America. And why the whole Sonic thing went on was that basically the Sonic team was using the Nights into Dreams for their Sonic game, but because Nights into Dreams creator refused to allow it, instead of he basically quit Sega. If they allowed his game, it should be used for Sonic, and that basically resulted in the whole Sonic game basically getting junked from being basically released. Yeah, time up. And thing is that actually Genesis, Sega was developing a whole, system to basically be all in one with the CD and the 32X. And then of course you had the whole Mortal Kombat thing. What was weird about Mortal Kombat was, to me, the console releases never looked as good as the arcade one. That was weird. Like, you have these uber powerful, 360s and computers and Dreamcasts and Saturns, but then weird is that Mortal Kombat 1 never looked as good as arcade. And of course, you got the confirmation when, MAME and the board for Mortal Kombat got released, and you're like, hey, yeah, that does look better. And I was always wondered why that was, Why was it Midway, and it ended up being Warner Brothers, and then, later AT&T never saw fit to release the Mortal Kombat arcade, the actual arcade one, on any console. It was always, some console port. Well, that's then when I finally got the internet, found out that the games that they released would always be basically ROMs that they would just simply have the game engine emulate instead of the actual game. So that's why in the end, the arcade versions of Mortal Kombat, Mortal Kombat 2, Mortal Kombat 3 never got released. That was always strange to me. And that's when I figured it out. And then of course you had your Super Nintendo happen, and the whole, Mario All-Stars with whole new sprite versions of various Mario games from the past. Something Nintendo never did again. I mean, that was like, wow, when I saw how Super Mario Brothers and Mario 2 looked on in Super Mario All-Stars on the Super Nintendo. That was like, wow. And you had your whole, from sprites to 3D with the whole pilot thing. It was like, I wonder how many people actually realized what they were actually looking at. How much of a game changer, Pilot Wings and Star Fox actually was. I mean, that was something. And of course, then you had the stills up, Donkey Kong Country. And those, and how amazing those, sprites look and everything. It's something, when you stop thinking about it, is that some a lot of sprites games actually has held up better than even 3D games from years later. You stop to think about it. I mean, how many sprite games, even from the PlayStation or PlayStation 2, has held up till this day even? I mean, it's crazy. And then, of course, you had the whole, Sega, Saturn, launch, and then how PlayStation did the whole mic drop of just saying, I think it was $199 or something like that for the launch of the PlayStation 1. Or it was PlayStation 2, it was $299. I don't remember which one it was. And that, of course, brought games like Need for Speed and... The sad thing is, a lot of people probably don't know is that Need for Speed had actually little predated its PlayStation release, which I didn't even know until I got access to how far back actually Need for Speed went, and that was actually, I think it was the whole magazine thing with playable demos for different vehicles, working with certain car dealerships or brands or something to that effect, to simulate you're test driving the vehicle, not actually test driving the vehicle. That was really cool. But what's crazy though is that how the N64, Mario 64 is still more popular than most of the games from the PlayStation. Stop to think about it. I mean, that's the crazy thing is that our whole YouTube channels dedicated to Mario games. despite, you know, Nintendo's complicated relationship with their own fans. I mean, that's really saying something. I mean, I could really go on about this. You know, talk about licensed music, but we're not really here, you know, to talk about, you know, individual games. Just kind of a bird's eye view. But let's get to the most important part, you know. PlayStation 3 and DLC and digital content. And what I think about that. Well, let's start with the, we'll start talking about the whole, you know, the taco and the bug on the taco cheese, all right, or some people like to call it the elephant in the room, but I want to start calling it what it is, the crazy donkey in the room, because it is a crazy donkey. That game developers, you know, think like this, all right? All right. We're going to slam this into talking about the 360, all right, because that would be my first system that actually went the most into with, you know, that had, you know, DLC and digital releases. All right. All right. And I want to start with my first experience with, you know, losing, you know, I had actually bought some of the old, you know, I was like, yeah, I want to play some of the old, you know, NES versions of, like, you know, Double Dragon and stuff like that. So I got Double Dragon, okay? And then, shortly after I got in Double Dragon, it had, you know, was taken off. Alright? And that meant that pretty much when I booted it up, despite the fact that I downloaded the whole version of Double Dragon, it just went into demo because the game was taken off of the arcade on the 360. That was a problem. And then I went and actually was like, you know what? Yeah. I played Zapper, you know, for my channel, but I first played it on the 360. So I actually went and got, I heard about this whole, you know, code thing that they were trying with this, like, you know, don't really affect the game type, you know, much, okay? Because there's not really anything that's, you know, all right. And when I got it, I was like, all right, I'm going to go ahead and put the code in, you know, so I could have everything that was put on the disc. I found out the servers were shut down, so I bought a new game to make sure I had everything that the game had to offer. It worked. I was like, okay, why didn't it work? So I went on to, hold on a second. And so basically, I then found out because they shut the servers down. Keep this in mind: is the 360 was still being primarily supported, and the one didn't even come out yet when all this happened. And that means that games like that were like, where they have content that is somewhat related to it, you know, that needs servers to install. If the servers are shut down, you can't get that content. That was a real eye-opener. And then, of course, you had the whole, you know, achievement thing happen. Yeah, at the start, like, yeah, achievements were just like stuff you could just do yourself, and that meant you could have the console, you could buy the game, you could get the achievements. What I didn't understand was that they were going to make all these achievements all, like, almost over half of them is all online related. And of course, because the console achievements are tied to your profile, that meant that even if you did get all the achievements and then, they stopped supporting the system, that means you couldn't even get all the achievements on your gamer card. And even the games that have, lockables tied to the achievements is like, what's the point, If something was like tied to online activity, because it ain't too easy just to, so they're just kind of, just charge through getting achievements, because it requires other players to work with you to make it happen. So then we come to the great and powerful, Minecraft. Well, how do you get exposure to Minecraft? Well, I guess that would be, I would probably go along the lines of, that would be the 4J Studios Minecraft. Yeah. I'm one of them. My first experiences with Minecraft, as you've probably heard a few times me reference, because of the difference how the console is from PC, would be the console version by 4J Studios Minecraft. Yeah, that would be my first experience with Minecraft. Okay. Would be the console version. Yeah. So I guess at this point, now would be a good time to kind of like mention my, when I was little, my gaming games was the Atari 2600, the learning games, Hangman, and that math game from the Atari 2600, those type of games. Yep. I'm that old. Yes, a wee little baby was having the Atari 2600 to help me learn. But I think still, Barnstormer is definitely was really the. I still do that all the time. You just kind of get the opponent boxer right up in the corner and just start bopping them. Yeah, I think Barnstormer was definitely. I think Barnstormer and I think Joust on the 2600 was definitely like my favorites. Yeah. And then I think the best game from the NES would have been Super Mario Brothers, 3. I got 91 points. Would have been like the NES. And I think the Sega Genesis, gotta give it to. I have to give it to the Sonic games, because most of the other Genesis games had arcade versions that were just better. And the fact that the arcade version of those games is still trapped in arcades is a tragedy. They're arcade versions. Like the Mortal Kombat, the classic Mortal Kombat, the real first Mortal Kombat, its arcade version is still trapped arcade, because for some reason, most of the console releases were still from the console sprite version, not the better looking arcade version. But at least Sega has, started to try to step up and kind of like, I guess you could say, take a polishing rag to the old Sonic games. Because there are actually whole reviews on showing some of the differences of them and stuff like that. I mean, of course, pretty much, I think Smash TV on, I have to say, pretty much Smash TV on almost anything was always a fantastic game. Yeah. I don't think the Sega CD really had any real standouts. I mean, there are some that listed some, but around where I live, the Sega CD and the 32X didn't really get a good support from local retailers. That didn't help them much, Because you had the CD, the 32X, and Super Nintendo, and of course you had Nintendo 64 and the PlayStation in the near future. So local retailers were kind of winding down their support for Sega hardware, if that makes any sense. And then Sony PlayStation, like that had so many good games like Kalek and Naruto Shindens 1, 2, 3, and of course you had the best Tekkens and Soul Calibur and Soul Blade games. Of course you had at launch you had Jumping Flash. I mean, anybody said that newer hardware is actually the standout hardware, I'm sorry, but in sheer game variety, as in, you go to your store, you look at the games, I wanted to say it, the PlayStation 1 just basically has it like, it's crazy. I just don't know how else to say it. It's just crazy how the PlayStation, has the sheer crazy variety of games. I mean, you just look at it. Just look at that library at launch. It had everything. I mean, I think that's one of the few systems that I have to say the launch library. I had most of it because all the games was so different. Always till this day, I'd be that kid that when I went to school, that when I got home, I would just walk through the door. I would, slam a book straight on the floor, get that homework out of the way to play Smash TV. I was that. And of course, when I got, to high school, then just so I'd have more time, I actually just so I'd have more time for more gaming. What I actually did was I actually figured out how the teacher would go through the book, what sections of the book, what the assignments would be, and then I deciphered it, and then I actually got the homework and the schoolwork done in advance. I had more free time for drawing and gaming. As that was me. Okay, you're probably now at this point like, when are you going to explain why boxing on the Atari 2600? Why boxing? And 30 minutes in, is he going to get to this? I will get to it. I will get to it. All right, I'll get to it. Just chill out. You're probably right now like, but it's the games is Steam, and computer games, and Windows browsers. Where, when, how, at what point? Well, okay, I'll get to that, like right now. So, at one point, all right, okay, I actually did have a computer and consoles. I still have a console in another room, which that's for a future video. What that console is waiting for. Alright. Well, at one point I actually did. I think it was around like PlayStation or PlayStation 2, okay. Comp USA was in my area. Went over there. The first computer was actually like, yeah, I got it. The computer shop had the person fix it. It wasn't that good of a computer. It was like Windows 95 at the time. It was already, on the horizon. All right. I actually still have my software pack from that computer and this computer I'm actually into. Well, went to Comp USA, bought the computer case, bought the computer parts, and then put it together. Got Windows XP. Yeah, Windows XP. Arguably still, till this day, the best operating system. Don't you hit me when I talk about Windows XP? Yet. It was all nice, streamlined, no extra crud on it. It was just the operating system. That is Windows XP. It was all nice. Stripped down, you had your AC Sport mode, which wasn't really that great, but if you knew how to handle it, yeah. You could get your Windows 95 and games working on it too if you knew what you're doing. All right. One by one point. I've actually been doing that lately because I've been talking so much instead of just concentrating on getting it into the glitch back and forth. Because actually, in Atari 2600 boxing, actually one of your players' fist is like 1 pixel longer than the other one, so actually you can easily get them into a bouncing left to right pretty well. Just cream them. So yeah, my first real computer was one that I picked apart and I put together. Computer. I took it into Comp USA if I needed like debugging or a major deep computer, cleaning. All right, so that's the only time I really went into Comp USA. All right, and then that's when I got into computer gaming, and I still actually have my library from that computer. I still had a console, but I was actually pointing more to computers. Yeah, most of my time with the computer was actually, the 360 era. Because in large part, when I got the computers, that's when I found out about, game modding and all that stuff. And that was a whole game changer. Yeah, you slide your game on your disc, but then if you knew how to, use your internet good and get on different websites, you could probably did one, mod your game. I kind of a drop off from pure gaming for a while because I decided to, play more of the 360 games and not really, have a computer. And then I was like, heck, I'll try the laptops. Laptop just never really worked for me. They just don't have the power of that a desktop brings to the table. Like right now, perfect example, okay? If you're playing a retro game, like let's say, like I'm doing right now, Atari 2600 boxing. If you're doing that, you got to realize you got your computer running your operating system and then all that stuff. Like right now, it's running that plus OBS, which that's a whole other thing. All right. But if you're just playing, like let's say Atari 2600 boxing, your computer is actually emulating the Atari 26 hardware. There's the Atari 2600 hardware that's being emulated is then running boxing. So you're actually running a 3 or in some cases 4D, emulation to run the game, if this makes any sense, which I don't want to get into that because I don't want to bore you to death with that, even though I could bore you to death with that, talking about how emulation works. Okay? So, yeah. Alright. And of course then, I started, what really got me like, yeah, computer gaming is when I basically got Star Trek Armada 2, and I was like, holy cow, these mods, I completely changed it from Star Trek to Babylon 5 to naval combat. It's just like crazy. And I like figured out to get into coding and like and I figured out how to have it like Babylon 5 and Star Trek, and it was just nuts. What I got Armada 2 to do. And of course then, what I do with the Academy and, Bridge Commander pretty much just cinematic quality ships on Bridge Commander. It was just crazy. Kansas especially more like show accurate ships. Yeah, but sadly a lot of stuff from back then for mods that it's like has been like taken off the internet or just now, not that easily findable anymore. Yeah. Well, I could talk a bit about the minor systems. I guess at this point now I should actually, tell you. Well, boxing for the Atari 2600 was released in 1980. Yep. I'm a January 1980 baby. Yep. That means, I was there for the premiere of The Simpsons. Unfortunately, a little after, Star Trek original series and a lot of the Doctor Who. But I still know about it. Thanks to, VHS. And, you found out a while back that, yeah, I'm more of the Star Wars movies, one. I get into, wrestling with politics and all that, but, this is more of just a little retrospective for what I was there for. Yep, I am playing a game that, regardless of what year it is, it's basically as old as I am right now. I mean, I guess the question is, should we go back? Well, the major problem with can we go back to gaming where it was like, yeah, the whole game was on your cartridge, on your disc. Can we go back to it? Well, I'm going to hate to say it. We're never going to be able to go back to that, probably. Because the major problem is, as you've seen, console manufacturers, they're in trouble. We could be looking at probably a time when Sony PlayStation and the Microsoft Xbox division's already basically, there's already talks that, eventually it's just going to be a tab on your Windows computer. It's not even going to be a console. Because it already is. I mean, my computer's already got an Xbox integration into it. I've literally got my Microsoft Xbox accounts right here on my computer. Minecraft, which is owned by Microsoft, uses your Microsoft account on your computer, your Xbox account. Your Windows account is now an Xbox account. If that doesn't say Microsoft's console Xbox division ain't long for this world, it ain't long for this world. And Sony's, well, you've seen the recent PlayStation announcement. It's less powerful now. You can get a more powerful computer for the cost of that PlayStation Pro that they've announced. Seriously, you could buy the parts and build yourself a more powerful computer than the cost of that PlayStation. It used to be that you would buy a console and probably have a computer too if you got that kind of money. And 10 to 1, that console and those games that console is going to be cheaper than more powerful and cheaper than your computer, because the computers have to run your operating system and the game. You see what I'm saying? Whereas console, it's just geared to run the game. That means in the end, the console hardware could be a little less powerful than the computer, but in the end, the games would be more powerful or better looking than the computer. But now it's the other way around. Literally, the consoles are now multimedia systems. So that means you've got a lot of extra bloat that's running in them. And now you're basically buying a console with a new PlayStation Pro price. You're now buying a console for more money and be less powerful than if you bought a computer and built it yourself, the parts and built it yourself. And it ain't that hard to do. I mean, that's crazy. That is seriously crazy. Then, of course, Nintendo's doing Nintendo's, different thing now. Because at least Nintendo's consoles since the Wii and the Wii U and the Switch has had some gimmick to give them something to make it worth getting. But the PlayStation and the Microsoft, heck, the controllers, you can pair them to your computer now. So now it's basically reached a point where you look at the PlayStation or the Xbox and you're like, what's the point? And the games are already starting to come to Steam from those platforms. I'm sorry, but if they were, I mean, don't quote me on this, but I'm just going with what I'm seeing here going on. I think PlayStation and Xbox is actually, looks of it to me, they're pivoting to computer. What's going to happen is you buy like a game from like Sony, that was Sony backed. They're going to make you have to have a PlayStation account, which don't make a lick of sense, because let's face facts here. It doesn't mean Sony made the money from the sales. I mean, yeah, they go to the investors and be like, yeah, we got the PlayStation accounts. It's like all this amount of, subscribers on the PlayStation account. It don't mean that they bought the hardware or the games on the PlayStation, or that Sony's getting the microtransactions from the games. It don't mean that. Well, I've been sitting here playing Atari 2600 boxing for 46 minutes, boring you poor viewers to death. All right, I guess this is a good time to end this little retrospective and be just talking your ear off about gaming and what I think. Do I think gaming's future is bad? No. Even if Nintendo, Microsoft, Xbox, let me try to make sure I say this right. Even if Nintendo bellies up, Microsoft, Xbox divisions goes away, and then your Xbox account just becomes a Microsoft Windows account, and Sony ends up giving up on the PlayStation division altogether, it's not bad, all right? Just go into Steam, okay? Search and sort new releases, and the sheer amount of games that comes out every month from third-party developers on Steam, it is insane. There is actually more new games released every month than during the peak of the console generation. But is the future looking good for these million and billion-dollar AAA games? No. That was never sustainable. Literally, the generation that brought us the PlayStation, the PlayStation 2, Super Nintendo, and the turbo graphics and all that, has been bankrolling these million and billion-dollar AAA games with these huge teams and designs by committees, practices, and all that, and paying for these, consulting firms. That was never sustainable. Never. It was never going to be. It was never going to even stand a prayer to be sustainable. That's why these big AAA $1 million games that's got like Hollywood-sized budgets, it's never going to be sustainable. What's my thoughts on the situation with Hollywood? Well, unfortunately, we've gone from having, you know, many studios making these different pilots for these different shows that might or may not get picked up and greenlit into a series, to basically, let's face facts here, you've only really got Warner Brothers, Disney, Paramount, and like 2 others. Okay? And they're all were basically, and these productions are just slammed with unions and paying a fortune for just a show. That budget will go to a movie from that studio once in a while. No, that was never going to be sustainable. It's not sustainable, so it's inevitably collapsing. Because they've decided to put agenda before it. Can it course correct? Yeah. Should we let it collapse? Definitely. Let them fail. Point blank. Because from today, going back to the silent films, there is so much content already existing, okay? You can watch a different show for your entire life and never watch the same thing twice. That's without even taking into account YouTube. I mean, I've got literally Vincent Price down here right next to me. Vincent Price collection. Then I got Gundam Wing in there. I've got libraries. I got a library of DVDs and Blu-rays mixed in now. I've got even Samurai Jack sitting down here. I could literally just keep buying something different. Just a random DVD or a Blu-ray off of eBay or Amazon, or even going to the local store. And never watch the same thing twice. Heck, I could go on to flipping DuckDuckGo or Google. I could look up public domain stuff too. I could watch public domain stuff on here and live stream and chat with you. And my wife too. And not give 2 fucks about what YouTube thinks or what Hollywood Studios thinks, because guess what? There is that much content already existing. We don't need to support these studios. We don't. You don't have to. So they can fail and not change a damn thing. There's that much content already existing. If anything, you might find that without them lobbying the government, you might actually be better off. Alright? Alright. I somehow managed to pad this video out that I thought it was going to be 20 minutes to 54 minutes. Alright, as always, thank you for watching, everybody. And I have now played the oldest game on my YouTube channel. Atari 2600 Boxing. For close to over 40 minutes straight while talking. As always, everybody, thank you for watching. And, well, peace out, everyone. I've got stuff to do.